Well, set champs for Reign of Jafar has begun, and I'm not a moment too soon, especially with how reveal season is about to begin for Fabled as we find out what cards are going to be removed and which are going to be added to the game. But we're not talking about that necessarily. Instead, we are going to be talking about the deck lists that are starting to top your set champs and what potentially you could be bringing to your own set champs as well. All of that and more starting right now. So with this meta, of course, there's going to be a couple of things that might be changing here pretty soon. And on the plus side, that's going to be a good thing. The whole meta feeling of this is that it's just not necessarily feeling all that great with everything considered, unfortunately. We've kind of stagnated out a lot, and there's been a couple of people, that have kind of stepped away from the game for now until they're able to get back into this new rotation of things. And that's going to be a little bit difficult because we've kind of had the same meta from the very beginning. Blurple's become a lot more popular. Ruby Amethyst has kind of taken that step back. This card has been kind of up in limbo for a couple of sets now. We haven't seen a whole lot that has been really developing well here, and that's kind of disappointing. But with that being said, there's still some really exciting things out here in the meta. And now, first and foremost, of course, you're going to be looking at Steel Song as being still one of the more popular decks here at 1,500 matches that have been played thus far that at least have been reported in that case. 53% win rate, really good in that case. And also the hardest matchup that it is going to be having is going to be Ruby Sapphire. I mean, that's going to be the hardest one. And that one, you're more so hoping that your opponent misses a little bit on their draw. But not only that, that you are going to be able to, hit your aggro side of things to continue to get things going. But otherwise, Steel Song has had some really great matchups so far and been able to do an absolute lot. Now, with that being said, now aggro has moved its way up. We've seen it kind of take a step back from last set at least, but this has been able to come back into the meta stronger than ever, especially with, for example, like the Lady that is able to do absolutely so much. Now, we haven't seen necessarily like the new Goofy, hasn't been able to do a whole lot just yet, but that's okay. New cards are going to be coming out, and it'll be interesting to see how that is going to continue to develop. But the Lady has been absolute boss, but not only that, the new Rhino has been an absolute menace in this meta to be able to go against because, man, it can be so difficult with that resist +2 to try to go ahead and sacrifice maybe 2 characters, potentially even more, to go ahead and take out Rhino. Now, with that being said, you could potentially even go ahead and use a Zeus. Luckily, Zeus will be able to take him out first and foremost, but still, it is so difficult to try to remove Rhino, and the ability to sing at 4 or even be able to quest for 2 is just an absolute difficult thing to try to take down. And Steel Song and Aggro both thrive with this card. Now, with that being said, Blurple has done some pretty incredible things so far. It hasn't necessarily been able to win a whole ton of set champs, but it's been able to put a pretty big impact on things and been able to show that it is a deck that is going to be sticking around. And not only that, though, it's going to be being played a lot more. Now, with that being said, Blurple is going to be a little bit harder to potentially play just because you're relying on your card draw a lot more. And luckily, there is a lot of card draw that this deck has. But you're going to be relying on that a little bit more than what you probably would be otherwise. And the hard part is, too, is if you happen to miss a couple of things, then you might be just giving your opponent the game in that case. And even still, though, it's going to be a tough matchup going against Ruby Sapphire again, and even a difficult matchup going against Ruby Amethyst as well, seeing a 30% win rate and a 36% win rate. Now, of course, that's not going to be anything to write home about also because you are going to be going against the Amethyst Emerald decks, which have a 45% win rate, which can be very difficult to have to go against. And that's already a great deal of the meta that you are struggling with. But still, if you're able to see something like Amethyst Steel, which is a pretty popular format so far, or a pretty popular deck in this format, or even like Aggro, for example, Blurple just can absolutely run against. Even like Chernadogs, for example, which isn't the highest represented deck just yet, but it still is seen every now and again. Blurple just absolutely devastates Chernadogs, especially with things like Bell turn 1, Fox turn 3, things of that nature can be absolutely insane to have to go against. Now, Ruby Sapphire has had a pretty difficult time here. The Hiram ban has slowed down the deck a lot and removed a lot of the consistency. There's going to be a couple of things that you are going to have to rely on with this deck. And luckily, that's been the nice part because it's gone from a pretty much a S tier deck that we saw in Arcasia's Island all the way down to now it's at a good level, 54% win rate, pretty equal with everything else, which is pretty dang awesome to be able to see. And then also you're going to be able to see how everything else fares against it as well. Now, of course, this is going to be the best matchup against Steel Song, which is the most represented deck in this meta right now. Even still, though, it has a hard time going against aggro, going against bounce, going against, especially Sing Together discard, because you get the best of both worlds. Not only do you get your singers from Amber, but you also get a lot of discard and bounce back. And so, 21 matches that have been played, not necessarily a whole ton, but still 19% win rate is absolutely insane to be able to see. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this continues to develop, especially as we head into Fable, because, Ruby Sapphire can really begin to make a big change here as things continue to develop. Now, with that being said, though, the items build is really interesting because it does seem to be a little bit better at going off because you do have the card draw there that Burn doesn't necessarily have. You're kind of hoping in the mid to late game that you're able to find those cards, continue to fill up your hand, continue to give you the answers so that you can control the game, especially if your opponent is getting a lot of lore early on. And that's going to be one of the hardest parts about playing the Burn deck side of things is that, you might have the McDuck Manor, you might have other cards of that nature, the Maui Half Sharks, but you're just going to be finding yourself almost in a little bit more trouble than what you might like because you don't have as consistent of card draw. But then again, with items, you at least have Maurice's Workshop, and you're playing so many items that you're going to continue to be able to just refill your hand. You're going to have a lot of ink as it is, and to be able to get things moving forward. Now, discard also hasn't been necessarily too big in the meta. Same with Ruby Amethyst, but it still has some very decent matchups. And the last thing that I really want to talk about here, not just tempo, but discard and bounce. Now, EA has been really interesting, and bounce being back in the meta is really something to see because we haven't really seen this be too much in the meta. It kind of fell away about 2 sets ago and never was really able to come back, but now it feels like that it is really starting to make an impact, but it's kind of having the problem that Blurple had, 2 sets ago as well, where people aren't quite wanting to take that leap yet. That's perfectly understandable there. You can see why they do that, but still, the win rates speak for themselves. Now, you're still going to be struggling against Steel Song, and rightfully so. Aggro, you might be having a little bit of a problem with, but that's still not going to be anything to really worry about necessarily. Because, gosh, you can go against Burn and have a 71% win rate, Lurple 55% win rate, items as well, 65%, and Ruby Amethyst 62. The win rates are just absolutely insane sometimes. And especially the Burn deck, going EA, having a 71% win rate. 2 sets ago, even 1 set ago, that wasn't a number that you saw. You were worried about going against Ruby Sapphire in that case if you were EA because it was going to be a bit of a grind. And you didn't know if you were going to be coming out on top because if you answered their initial board, the card draw was so hard to come by that you might be finding yourself in a bit of trouble there. And so the fact of the matter is that you are finding yourself having a 71%, 81%, 80%. Now, of course, we do need to get more games there to be able to find out how this meta is going to continue to develop for EA. But still, it's looking very promising on the win rates that it's having. And it's even outperforming a couple of other decks so far, which is really exciting to be able to see. And so I can't wait to see how this is going to continue to develop as we play a lot more of our set champs. Now, with that being said, we haven't necessarily had a whole ton just yet. Again, the season just began. Now, there's a couple of people, 12, 19, 33, and things of that nature. A Stitch Enchanted, so that's going to be a pretty good prize pool. The biggest one that I really want to talk about first, though, is the Jackson Warren Memorial. That's going to be something that's really interesting here because there was a first deck that is going to be really interesting to take a look at. and that's going to be this one. Why is that? Well, the biggest thing about this is that they are running a lot of interesting sauce here. And the biggest thing too, though, and that worries me, is I really want to see the gameplay against more steel-heavy decks, because it seems like that if you are able to have those answers via steel, that you might be able to get some things going, and it can be very difficult for your opponent to be, or this player to be able to get back into the game. But still, this is a really fun deck to be able to see in this meta. And now, of course, we do have like the Flynn Rider making a return there, gaining 3 lore with anything. You have the new Tinkerbell that you're running 4 of, and that whenever you go ahead and play a character with 5 or more, not willpower, you know what I mean. That's in Riftbound. Or yeah, anyway, you know what I mean. With that being said, yeah, 5 or more, you're able to exert them and gain 2 lore, which is really good as well. Then, of course, the bells to go with popsicles. Cogsworth is going to be really interesting because while you have an item card in your discard, this character becomes a 5/3, which is just absolutely insane. Now, another Li Shang that we might not have seen a whole lot about, but it has a shift where you discard a character card, and characters with 4 or more attack are able to get +1 lore gain. I mean, that is really interesting right there as well. That is going to be something that is really scary to be able to see. Now, Prince John is also going to be a really interesting one too. A 3-cost 5/5. Whenever an opponent plays a character, deal 1 damage to this character. And so, I mean, you are taking a potential hit there, but still something to be very mindful of. Goofy's to gain 2 lore. Grandma Tala to be able to gain card draw. Scrooge McDuck because he is an absolute menace. Baymax for healing. Maui for board control. Goofy for rushing and taking out big things. Maximus, kind of the same thing. At the end of your turn, if you have any characters in play with 5 or more attack, gain 2 lore. And then if you have any in play with 10 or more, gain 5 lore instead. Now, of course, you're not going to necessarily be getting the 10 or more in that case, but still, you're at least going to be able to play Maximus at the end of your turn. Then you're going to be able to end your turn and see, hey, do I gain anything? Yeah? Awesome. Let's go ahead and see that. Really good card. And being over 5, I mean, especially with how many characters you have where that is going to be possible, really cool. I also am curious about the Flynn Rider again. It's going to be such a good card, especially if you can get things, like the, Prince John out. You go Flynn Rider turn 2, you go Prince John turn 3. Woo, that's going to be scary. Now, with that, of course, the Tomatoes are going to be recycling the Popsicles, the Scepters of Arendelle, and things of that nature, and then Sail the Azurite Sea. Really interesting deck. The price point is really competitive as well. $187 in total. Not very expensive. Tomatoes, Happy as a Clam are going to be the ones that you are going to be, seeking after the most. Is it something that you necessarily need to run 3 of? No. You could find another option in that case, and it can be, at that point, very cost-effective to build this deck. So really excited to be able to see. Now, the deck that got second place is going to be DKP My Way, and then also we even had an aggro and a control deck to be able to make it to the meta as well, and then we're going to be taking a look at Blurple with that. And the reason why this is going to be so interesting is because DKP My Way is going to be, of course, his way. I mean, he still was able to do really good getting second, and that's also just the power of this deck in general. Hades has been one that's been throwing into these deck lists a lot more lately, which is really cool, especially since he is a set 1 card, and he very well could be seeing rotation here in a month. So something to really keep in mind there. But really cool. One of my favorite cards in this game right now. Just so fun. And then, of course, you have a couple of really interesting cards here as well. You're running the Happy as a Clam, but you're also running Merlin's Carpet Bag, where you can pay 1 and return an item card from your discard to your hand. You can easily just go ahead, play the Popsicle, draw 1, banish it, heal 2, play 1, or pay 1, tap Merlin's Carpet Bag, go ahead and get it back, play a Popsicle again, and then gain, draw 2 cards basically off of that really easily. And now Hideaway again, playing 1 of that. Develop your brain for card draw. Sail the Azurite Sea for ramp and card draw. And Vision of the Future to find maybe that answer that you need. Then you got your basic ramp and things of that nature. Let It Go, really good card as well. Being able to put a card, any character, into the Inkwell face down and exerted. Awesome. And then Pirate's Life for lore control as well. And Be Prepared. to devastate their board state. Be prepared when you have McDuck Manor out onto the field, man. That can absolutely hurt, and great job there with that kind of combo. Now, aggro is going to be really interesting because it can be a pretty big hit and miss. There's going to be a couple of things that you might not be able to do here, especially if you miss out on card draw. Rapunzel's Tower, though, is still going to be something that is very helpful for you because you're going to be able to go ahead and stick characters in there, and them getting +3. That is absolutely crazy. And also being a 8 location is going to be so difficult to try to take down. Now, of course, we have the Daisy Duck. We have the Mulans, Cinderellas in the beginning. Rhinos, of course, you're going to see them in any type of deck like this. And Docks. Now, Whole New Worlds aren't even necessarily being played more. And even in Steel Song, you're not seeing it being played more either, which is just absolutely insane to try to think about here. Docks have been playing really, really well lately. And it's been interesting, though, because we haven't even necessarily seen, the Devastating Plan, where you just go ahead and either discard however many cards in your hand and draw that many, or if you have no cards in hand, you just draw 3. We haven't seen that really go in here, even though it only costs 1 more. But Doc is at least a character onto the board, and you get to draw 2 cards no matter what. There's no pre-con for that. Now, Penny has been seeing a lot of gameplay as well, being able to give resist +1. Prince has been really good. I mean, a 0/5. That is going to be so scary to have to go against in this case. Lady is going to be the bread and butter of this deck, being able to play a 2 cost or less there in that case. And if you go ahead and play a Lady and then you get a Prince out through that, whew, that is devastating. And then also that is a good target as well, that Prince, or Rapunzel being able to heal up to 3 to draw 3 cards. Rhino is going to be the biggest devastator of this plan as well. Now, of course, Let the Storm Rage on, Strength of Raging Fire, and Rapunzel's Tower. So really good job getting 3rd place. Now, we have seen Ruby Amethyst kind of fall to the wayside a little bit, which has been interesting and a little bit sad to see because it has been such a prevalent deck for so long. But it seems like when Flynn Rider seemed to fall to the wayside, that this deck kind of fell off a little bit too, and it hasn't necessarily got the support that we've wanted with this deck list. But still, it looks like that this is still able to hold up in this meta as well. And I mean, we got Chernobog Followers, Diablo, Magic Broom, Cusco, which is going to be able to be basically another Diablo. So against Steel Song, they have to use something to basically get rid of it, which is awesome. If they use one of their songs, even better. And then you're able to immediately replace itself and get another card in hand. I absolutely love Cusco, one of the best cards for this kind of deck in that manner. Because, I mean, Magic Broom, you at least have to play another character. Chernobog Follower, same thing. But with Diablo and Cusco, you're able to gain a good card. Now, Lloyd, interesting. Pulled like 20 of him when I bought my boxes. Now, with that being said, he's interesting to be seen in this list because when you play this character, each opponent loses 1 lore and you gain 1 lore. So for 3, really good. But also being a 1/2, little tough to try to work with him on that. But, that's how it is. You can still pump him up with Merlin Crab, which is going to be really good. And that's going to be a cheap trade for you. And you got to knock your opponent down 1. Awesome. White Rose to be able to gain a lore, and a 3/3 is devastating. Genie for card draw and evasiveness. Hero of All for board control, and Lady Tremaine to just absolutely devastate your opponent's board if they have 1 or 2 characters out. They're losing one of those, and luckily they get to pick. But if there's only 1 out, that's too bad. And otherwise it's a pretty standard list. Really cool to be able to see this actually be able to get 4th place as well. 38 players. Still able to get 4th place, not too shabby. Now, last deck that we are going to be talking about in this case is going to be Blurple, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes because I absolutely love Blurple. Now, of course, you have 2 versions of, well, technically 3, but we're not going to talk about the Jafar version because it's not just quite there yet. We did have a Jafar win, a set champs, but it's just not as consistent because if you take out Jafar, you don't necessarily have a whole lot to add to the game at that point, and it's so hard to be able to win. But with that being said, the 2 versions of this Blurple that you can see is where you are playing more of the Diablos and the Chernobog Followers, or you just go straight for no one drops outside a Popsicle. Here we go. Let's just run with it. And it looks like in this case, that's what they went with, going with a Tipo, a 4, but you're still going to see, the Sail, the Azurite Sea, maybe? No Sail, the Azurite Sea. So really interesting that they removed that. Wow. So really only the Tipo for that turn 2 ramp. So if you don't have that, okay. But you do have the Peter Pan Shadow Fighter. You're going to be going more for the aggro side of things, being able to just get Peter Pan out and then get Iago out the following turn to be able to have him have Rush and be a 4/6 to take out pretty much anything. Gaston's going to be able to draw a card. Really good card right there. 2 Tamatoa Happy as a clan because you have 6 items in the deck. 4 Hades, again, for board control. 2 Monstros, really good at devastating aggro, devastating Steel Song, especially because it has Rush. You can go ahead and, a lot of times Steel Song will have a lot of their stuff exerted, and you can just play Monstro and then just drop 3 cards, devastate their board, take out 4 characters, and Monstro doesn't even necessarily have a whole lot of damage missing in that case. Hideaways having 2, I've always been more of a fan. I'm not necessarily a fan of ever really playing one. It's so hard to be able to play one because it's like, well, when you see it, is it necessarily a good thing? But, with that being said, though, having 2 Hideaways, seeing it a little bit more can be very helpful, especially if there's any locations or items that you absolutely just need to get rid of. Oh, there's Sell the Azurite. See, I'm blind. Finders Keepers, again, for card draw, drawing 3 cards for 5, just refilling the hand can be a very big help, especially after Monstro in that case. That can be a big game changer for you on just getting a lot of answers out there in this case. Now, Friends on the other side, Into the Unknown, and McDuck Manors is going to be really good. And so, guys, this meta is going to be really fun. The set champs has been really kind of a last hurrah of the old. This meta has kind of developed over the years. It's been a while that we've been having a lot of the same cards. Cards that they've been able to add from the first 4 sets have been so exciting to be able to be a part of, but it has been so much of the same. And so again, enjoy this last season of these cards. Of course, they're going to be in Infinity, but it's the last time we're going to see these in our locals in standard play. It's going to be really sad to be able to see how that's going to develop, but man, it's going to be cool. I can't wait to see how this is going to go. But until next time, guys, have a good one.